Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Five Star Revolution podcast. I am your host, CJ Price. Thank you for everyone who has shared and liked our Facebook page, Five Star Revolution Podcast. If you haven't already, go over to Facebook right now and like and share our Facebook page, Five Star Revolution Podcast, for your chance to win a $100 Visa gift card. And also subscribe to our YouTube channel right now. And thank you so much for joining us here tonight. We have a very special guest right here on the Five Star Revolution podcast, and his name is Harley T Morris. How you doing tonight?
How's it going, man? I'm doing all right. Been a little banged up from a lot of the matches I've had recently, but I've been recovering pretty well. And yeah, I'm feeling pretty good overall.
That's great to hear, man. And thank you so much for joining us here tonight on the Five Star Revolution podcast. As I said, I know you're a busy guy, you have a busy schedule, and you wrestle a lot. So thank you so much for taking the time to joining us here. So my first question for you is, what's your first memory in professional wrestling?
In professional wrestling or of professional wrestling?
Of professional wrestling.
That's a very, very difficult question because growing up, my dad raised me on professional wrestling, me and my twin brother, to the point where we even had the two TV set up and lived and watched one with WCW Nitro, one with Monday Night Raw. So an absolute first memory of professional wrestling, I really couldn't tell you because I don't remember that far back.
So, were you a fan growing up though? Like, who was your favorite wrestler?
Absolutely. Growing up, one of my favorite wrestlers was Kane. It might have just been because my favorite color is red, but Kane was definitely one of my favorite. Mick Foley was one of my favorite wrestlers growing up. Um, as I got a little bit older, when I was in my teens, CM Punk was one of my favorites. Then Brian became one of my I'm sorry, Brian Danielson now, but he was one of my favorites growing up. So yeah, I've had a good number of favorites in my life.
And what made you want to become a pro wrestler? Like, one day did it hit your mind and say, "Hey, I can do that," or did you always want to become a wrestler in your life?
As far back as I could remember, I've always wanted to be a professional wrestler. Again, me and my twin brother, little kid, the little like dinky toy belts, wrestling around in the living room or in our front yard or whatever. So as long as I can remember, I've always wanted to be a professional wrestler.
So, do you remember your first match? And if so, how did it go?
Yes, this is actually a two-part answer here because my very, very first match I ever had in front of a crowd was just a quick squash against a guy named Troy Lords. I was a security guard at the show. He came out, was like, "I'll beat up anybody, doesn't matter who. You there, standing over there, yeah, you're training, right? Why don't you get in here?" And he beat me up for a few minutes, and looked vicious, and the crowd booed him, all this other stuff. So, the second answer to that question, my first official, like not done with training, but like I'm advanced enough to where I can be a character on the show, where I'm ready to step in the ring, was over the top rope challenge against a guy named Peyton Graham. It was like a 5 minute challenge thing where it came down to like the last 30 seconds, and all I had to do was stay in the ring. If I could last the time limit, I entered into a bigger Rumble match they were doing at the next show, and he ended up eliminating me with like 20 seconds to spare or something like that. So it came down to the wire. But that was my first official like match I had whenever I was graduated from wrestling training.
What did you learn from that match?
Um, Mostly just the experience being in front of a crowd for the first time, like playing a character. Because at the time, the promotion had me positioned with a certain character because I was known to go to shows before I started training to wrestle. I loved going to the shows. People in the crowd knew me, all this type of stuff. So when I started to train to become a wrestler, they stuck me with a character that was a fan. I would show up, uh, give my instructions, go around front when the crowd showed up, walk in with the crowd, get beat up, get thrown back in the crowd. That was my role. That was my character. That's the value they saw in me at first, which it wasn't a bad character to start with, but they never evolved it to really do anything.
So, what's your character now? Can you explain to the listeners who Harley T Morris is?
Yeah, absolutely. So the character the character I am now that I portray most often, and it's probably like the main one. Like if you're booking me, this is the character you're gonna get. Is the professional wrestling's finest, Harley T Morris. Because you see, while you have plenty of men and women who can go out there and do these fantastic stunts and gymnastics, all I need to do is target one body part. All I need to do is hit you with one spine buster and it's game over. Because I'm not about the thrills and the spills. I'm all about the 1, 2, 3 and collecting that paycheck. That's basically the character. It's like very, very old school Arn Anderson, Ric Flair, boots and trunks type of character.
And would you say that you use a lot of those guys' moves that you just mentioned in your matches?
Yeah, I absolutely use those type of moves. Like a spine buster is my main finisher. I do like a ripcord. Like if you've seen Okada, he does the Rainmaker, where it's like the ripcord into the clothesline. Mine's the ripcord, and I pick the guy up to a spine buster. So I do that. I usually target body parts for my matches because I like to tell that story of the guy's trying to fight, but he's got a bad wheel or a bad arm or a bad neck or whatever, but he's still able to fight through the pain. I like telling those kind of stories.
So, what's your favorite match that you've had in your career so far?
That's a very good question. I've had a lot. More recently, I had a match back in January against a guy named Jay. It was for a heavyweight title, and the match went about 20 minutes, and we went just all out, like snug shots. I went through an announce table, a lot of back, yeah, and the crowd was into it. It definitely, and it was for the promotion's heavyweight title promotion I've been with pretty much since the start of my career, and this was the night I won that title for the first time in my career. So that match will always hold a special place for me, mainly due to the fact that it was that finale, that finish line, that climax of 8 years of scratching, clawing, and getting to the winning the big.
So, have you shared the locker room with any legends or pro veterans that we might know?
Yes, I have actually. A promotion I work for up in Pittsburgh and Lawrenceville, the Keystone State Wrestling Alliance. Every year before the pandemic, they would have these special shows where we draw big crowds, really big crowds, and they would usually have a guest wrestler or a big name on the show. Like they've had the Legion of, not the Legion of Doom, the Demolition. They had Demolition on the shows. They before I got there, they had Hacksaw Jim Duggan on one show. I got to work a match where Ricky Steamboat got involved and helped the guy beat me because bad guys gotta go down on the big show. I shared even a couple years back they had the current reigning NWA heavyweight champion Nick Aldis in the locker room, so I got to share a locker room with him, which was really cool. Yeah, like I've shared locker rooms with guys who are currently signed by WWE. I've shared locker rooms with guys who are currently signed to AEW, the NWA. Yeah, so I've shared a number of locker rooms with some names. I never got to work any of them yet, which is probably the next goal on my list is to work an established name.
So, did you get to pick any of their brains or ask them questions about your match or about the wrestling business?
A couple of times, like there was a guy. Some of your listeners might know this guy named Big Bully Busick. He was a wrestler who worked at WWF back in like the mid to late '80s. He's a local where I grew up, and a show brought him in. A KSWA brought him in to a show once where I got to talk to him. Another show that ran in my hometown. Got to bring him in before I even started wrestling. I got to sit down and talk to him, and he gave me probably some of the best advice I ever got about business that I wish I would have taken more seriously a few years ago. That I'm taking a lot more seriously now. It's hit the gym, work out as much as you can, get that size on you. It helps your body, takes care of your body through all this like pain and grind and like that. Being in shape is more than just cosmetic. It's a way to protect yourself, to get yourself to where you won't get hurt taking all these bumps and bruises. So so I've gotten some advice from some, not all of them, and there was some I wish I would have taken a better advantage of, like the Nick Aldis one. I wish I would have asked him to watch my match, but he was there performing on the show, and I felt like I didn't want to bug him. I didn't want to go like, hey, I know you got your own match to worry about and your own thing going on tonight. Would you mind going out of your way to watch this nobody's match and give me any critiques? But I wish I would have. I really do. And if I ever get a chance to, I probably would again. Would ask him to watch the match.
What's the longest drive you've done as a professional wrestler? And was the outcome, or was it not the outcome, but was it worth your while?
Again, another two-part answer here. The longest drive I ever had to do was about 9 hours to Wisconsin. And it wasn't even for a show. It was for a seminar with Adam Pearce, who, as again your listeners might know, is right now the unofficial general manager of Monday Night Raw and SmackDown. But he was doing a seminar. NXT was doing a takeover in Chicago. He wasn't needed for the show, and he knew one of the promoters in the area, so he offered to run a seminar. So I went, and it was a very, very cool experience, very good experience, and probably one of the longest drives I've ever had to make. As for the second part to that answer, I'm about to top that in September. I'm driving down to Florida to make my debut down there for a show, and then and that's about a 15-hour drive from where I'm currently living.
Yeah.
And then after that show, like right after that show, I'm gonna have to hop in the car and drive 20 hours to New Jersey to wrestle a show that Sunday.
Wow.
Well, at least that's the plan. If the New Jersey show works out the way that I'm hoping it does, that's still to be determined, to be figured out. But last time I talked to the promoter, it's looking likely that's the way we're going to go with it. Is that I'm going to be on that show that Sunday. Again, things can change. Obviously, if they decide to go a different way or a different story or whatever. But as of right now, that's kind of what's the plan in my head is. Drive 15 hours to Florida, do that show, hop in the car, drive 20 hours to New Jersey, and do their show, and then drive 7 hours back to New Jersey.
So that's a lot of driving. That's a lot of traveling. And my next question to piggyback on that, when you do those long drives and you show up to a show and there's only like 20, 30 people in the crowd, are you disappointed? And how do you perform in those type of shows?
It's always a little disheartening because obviously any performer will tell you they want to be working in front of hundreds and hundreds of people. But at the same time, whether it's 30 people, 5 people, even if it's only 2 people, or heck, more recently with the pandemic and everything, even if it's from nobody but a camera, I go out there and I put on the same performance I would any other night. I give 110%. If you go to a professional wrestling show and you see Harley T Morris advertised, you're going to get wrestling's finest. You're going to get professional. Doesn't matter if there's 30 people, 20 people, 100 people. You are going to get the best I have to offer.
Very good answer, man. Very good answer. And you should always perform to your best because you never know who's watching.
Absolutely.
So, what can we expect out of Harley T Morris in the next 3 years?
Well, that's a very good question. It's also a weird one to answer because, like I said, I got that Florida trip in September, and I'm obviously hoping that leads to more bookings out in Florida, or someone from Texas or any of the southern states notices my performance, maybe get some bookings down south more. I would love to start working more in New Jersey. I was working there a little bit before, like right in the middle of the pandemic, and right a little before the pandemic started. It just once it hit, a lot of shows had to run outdoors, and then when winter hit, you really can't run a show outdoors in the middle of a snowstorm, you know. So I haven't been to Jersey in almost a year. So I would love to start working more shows up that way around New York State. So probably in the next 3 years, that's kind of my goal, is just to work more and more and more. And obviously, like I said, I would like to work an established name at some point. That's on my to-do list in the next 3 years, if possible. Probably hear my dogs in the background. I
Oh, good, man.
apologize.
No worries, man.
So that's my goals for the next 3 years at least. Is I want to try to just get my name out there more, work more shows, work more established names if possible, and just enjoy what I'm doing, really, because it's what I've always wanted to do with my life.
So, who is your dream opponent if you had a choice to wrestle right now?
CM Punk.
CM Punk, very good choice.
Like I said, I when I was in my mid-teens growing up, and he got big on WWE. I made the choice a long time ago in my life that I wouldn't drink, I wouldn't smoke, I wouldn't do any type of drugs, and I didn't know what it was called, but I just knew, like, hey, all that stuff just isn't for me. And then here's this guy covered in tattoos, looking like this rock star, this punk rock looking guy, and he's saying the same thing that I believe: not drinking, not smoking, not doing drugs, and he's given a name to it, straight edge, that I never knew before. And like I said, he is, when he says he is the best in the world, there's some truth to that. He is one of the best professional wrestlers in the world. Um, Probably in the last decade at least, he's established himself, his name, all that stuff. And the fact that he got to go out on his own terms, maybe not in the way everybody would have liked, maybe not in the way he would have liked, but he got to go out on his own terms. Now that there's rumors that he's going to come back, and he's still young enough to be as good as he ever was. There's guys who are working well into their 50s now and still putting on really good matches. And Punk's, I believe, only in his late 30s, early 40s.
Look at Sting. Sting's 62 years old, man.
Exactly. So if I got to choose anybody in the world right now to wrestle, to learn from, to work in front of a crowd, it would be CM Punk.
That would be very interesting, and I would love to see that match someday. So hopefully you get to live your dream, brother. So my next question for you is, what do you think is the hardest part of being a pro wrestler?
The travel. The pain obviously is a factor because living day by day with any type of bumps, bruises, nagging pains, nagging injuries. For instance, last week I hurt my back during a match, and it really affected my everyday life for a few days there. Like, it was difficult for me to get out of bed, difficult for me to walk around, but those are things you learn to live with, and it comes with territory. We all accept that. The travel, though, is probably the hardest part, I'd have to say, mainly because it takes me away from the people I care about. Me and my ex used to have issues with that, where I want more out of wrestling, and to get more out of wrestling, a very wise man once told me, "You're never going to go anywhere working 45 minutes away from your house." So I took that advice very, 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 very directly to the heart. And I was from a guy the guy's name is Brutal Bob Evans. If any of your listeners are wrestlers themselves or training to be wrestlers, if one of his seminars come up, I highly recommend it. Very knowledgeable. You'll get your money's worth. But so when he gave that advice at one of the seminars I attended, I made my decision. I wanted to travel. I wanted to just, if I'm going to do this, let's do this. And that caused a lot of friction between my ex. That caused a lot of problems because it meant that I wasn't around as much as I would have liked to be. And even now, like, I've had to miss birthdays, holidays, just a lot of different stuff because I made the choice to drive 4 hours, 5 hours to go to the show and try to make a living and try to get my name out there, and for the most part, like, a lot of the people I know understand. but it does affect a lot of my life. It's just the traveling, scheduling, all that stuff. So to answer your question, long story short, too late. To answer your question, the hardest part of professional wrestling, in my personal opinion, would be the travel.
So piggybacking on that, would you say that in wrestling you would have to make a lot of sacrifices to be successful in this business?
Absolutely. Now there are some out there who have been lucky enough to where they haven't had to sacrifice as much. Like a single guy playing in the NFL, maybe doesn't get drafted but get notices by like WWE or whatever, and they pay him a lot of money to train in Florida, and he meets a girl down there and all this other stuff. He's not really sacrificing as much, you know what I mean? But somebody like me and somebody like a lot of people I know who work the indie scene, who have wives, girlfriends, families, and stuff like that. It's they give up a lot of time with that. I'm going through the same myself. We give up a lot of time and sacrifice a lot, whether it be, like I said, the travel, whether it be our mental health, whether it be our physical health. We sacrifice a lot to do what we want to do.
So a couple more questions before I let you go, Mr. Morris. Would you say professional wrestling has changed your life? If so, how?
Absolutely, it's changed my life. It's given me a goal. It's given me a purpose, because I know some people are happy working a 9 to 5 or working a factory job or working, at a fast food place or being a waiter or whatever, and that's perfectly fine. For anybody out there who's making a living like that, that's awesome. I hope you're getting what you want out of life. I hope that you are getting the money you deserve, all that stuff. But for me, pro wrestling has always been it's always been, that star that's just right out of reach, that's right there. That's my goal to reach. So it's given me purpose. It's given me direction. It's given me motivation. Um, and I've told people before, if there ever comes a time where I have to take time off the wrestling, I'm not sure what I'm gonna do. Because I'll probably go stir crazy. I'll probably go nuts. This is all I've known since I've turned, 18, when I started training, and even before then, whenever I would just watch professional wrestling, talk about it. This is all I've ever known in my life is professional wrestling. So it's
Oh no, you're there. I lost you. We're still recording, folks. Five Star Revolution podcast. Sometimes we lose the. You still there? There you go.
yeah. I'm still here. Sorry about that. Somebody was
All
trying
right.
to. My apologies. But like I was saying, it's given my life purpose. It's given my life uh, a a reason. Type of
So, two more questions. When you're at a show, right, and you don't agree with how the promoter's booking you or how they're using you on the show, do you speak up and say something?
Well, honestly, I've been probably one of the lucky ones because I've never had to do that. Mainly because I'm kind of in the mentality of I'll show up. You're paying me to be here. You're paying me to be on your show. You're paying me to tell your story. Tell me what story you want told, and I will do the best I can to tell it. So, and I'm not one who like, we all have egos. Everybody in the business has an ego, whether they like to admit it or not. It's one of those things where my ego isn't, hey, I should be the champion. Hey, I should be, your guy. I should be making the most money. It's more the ego of, you put me in the ring with anybody you want to put me in the ring with, and I will tell the best story. I will put on the best match. I will do my damnedest to make sure that you see value in me. So no, I've never had to go up to a promoter or a booker and say, hey, you're booking me wrong, or hey, I don't like the way we're doing this, or hey, whatever. I've never had to do that. I might have given out suggestions of like, instead of doing that, why don't we do this? But it's still the same story, just with a little bit of a different direction to it. You know what I mean? But I've never just outright said, no, I'm not doing that, or no, we can't do that, or this sucks, or I've never had to do that.
So how do you deal? Last question. How do you deal with those veterans or people that have been in the wrestling business longer than you, and you have ideas for a match, and they just completely shun you out, and they say, "No, we're gonna do it this way."
Well, again, I've been pretty lucky to where I haven't really had that.
Okay.
I worked a match a couple of years ago against a guy named Dennis Gregory, and he pretty much let me call the entire match. He threw in his advice here and there, changed a few things here and there, like he has every right to, like any participant in a match does. But he basically trusted me to put the match together, and that was really awesome of him to do that. And he even complimented me afterwards, saying that it was a good match. I have had to work matches where I've had guys who go, okay, this is what we're going to do. And but they've always listened to my advice. So if a guy's going through a match, he's like, going to do this, or whatever. And I see something that could be changed or altered or maybe do a little different, and I speak up. They usually listened, and they've been like, okay, yeah, we can do that instead, or we can do this. I've never really had that thing where a veteran comes in and tell me, "Hey, keep your mouth shut. Don't say a thing. You're gonna do what I tell you to do." I've never had that because, for the most part, I'm not sure how much of that is even around anymore. Because a lot of guys are more respectful. A lot of guys are more, like, "Hey, we're here. We're doing what we want to do. Let's go out there. Let's kill it. Let's have a good time, etc." Um, but like I said, I've never really had anybody talk to me like that or talk down to me like that or anything like that. But what I will say is when I've had a guy come up to me and say, "Hey, this is what we're going to do," I've shut up and listened because that's my place. They're the veteran. They know what they're doing. I trust them to put together the match. And like I said, 9 times out of 10, when I've spoken up and I've given an idea how to change something in a match, they've listened. They've said, "Okay, we'll do it that way," or "If you think that will work," or whatever. I've never had someone tell me, "No, you just keep your mouth shut." But now, for anybody out there who is listening to this, if you are in that situation where a vet is talking to you about your match or talking to you about putting the match together, or if you're working a vet and they're putting the match together, the best advice I can give to you is mouth shut, ears open, listen, pay attention, see what type of story he's trying to tell with the match, and pick up those cues, pick up those lessons. So that way, whenever you go off and you have to work someone who's less experienced than you can do the same thing that guy just did for you. You can bestow on them how to put the match together, how to tell the story you want to tell, without it just being random spots for the sake of random spots.
So I know I said that was the last question, but I do have one question for myself. What does the T stand for in your name?
I've had a few people ask me this, including a couple of buddies of mine who would just make up random words just to joke around with it. But this actually has a funny story to it. See, my original character was named Fan Guy. That was the original character that I told you about earlier. And the name's terrible. And like I said, when it got to a point where it was time to evolve the character and change it, the promotion just stopped using me altogether. That was years and years and years ago, like a long time ago. So whenever it was time for me to go to other promotions and get work, I couldn't just do Fan Guy because that's a storyline character. That's not somebody you can just introduce on the back or whatever. You know what I mean? So whenever they were devising character, the booker at the time, they were doing like online television and stuff like that. Was what wanted to stick me with a character who was a babbling idiot, a guy who would make a fool out of himself and fall over and all sort of stuff, and talk with a bit of a southern accent like this because I'm from West. And so he's like, you're gonna walk into the office. You're gonna be like, "Hey, yo, I see that you have that PWX television, and I'm your next big superstar." And he basically wanted me to be a guy trying to get on TV, which again, fun idea, fun character, and I was willing to run with it. They decided not to do that. They went with the Fan Guy thing. But what they said is, we want you to be called Harley T Morris, but we don't want you to say it like Harley T Morris. We want you to put emphasis on the T. We want you to be Harley T Morris. And I looked at the promoter and I said, "You do know that's my real name, right?" And the promoter looks at me and goes, "What?" I was like, "Yeah, my full name, my legit name is Harley Todd Morris." And he just kind of laughed and was like, "Okay." And like I said, they decided not to use the character. Thank God. But but I liked the name because I've always liked my name. I'm proud to be a Morris. That's my legit last name. My middle name is Todd, so the T just fits. And my actual name is Harley. So I was like, you know what? That's actually not a bad name. It's a good name. I'll keep it. And that's what I've been for the past 8 years, Harley T Morris. And if I get to choose, I would like to have that name throughout my entire career.
Very great stories. I appreciate your time, Harley T. Morris. Thank you so much for joining us here tonight on the 5 Star Revolution podcast. I hope all of you listeners go over to Facebook right now and like our Facebook page, 5 Star Revolution podcast. Share, 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 and subscribe to our YouTube channel, 5 Star Revolution podcast. Mr. Harley T. Morris, it was my pleasure for having you on tonight. We wish you the best of luck in your career, sir.
Thank you very much. I just want to say really quick, if you don't mind me plugging my own stuff, uh, anybody who's listening to this, you can follow my athlete page on Facebook at Harley T Morris. I have an actual Facebook page, Harley T Morris, as well. You can follow me on Instagram at Harley-T- or underscore, not dash, Harley_T_Morris. I post a lot of gym selfies, a lot of wrestling action photos and stuff like that. And you can follow me on Twitter at Harley T Morris as well.
All right, that's not a problem, Mr. T. Morris. We'll share this on YouTube. We'll share this on our Facebook page, and we'll see you later down the road, man.
Definitely. Thank you very much, man.